The lights flashed across the water, making a reflected image of the colours, these images broken into rippling shards every so often by a passing boat, only for the mirror image to magically reform a few seconds later as a ripple stopped. The soft buzz of the insects' evening concerto filled the air, moulding with the rhythmic sound of a man-made music. A cooling breeze wafted away the heat of the day, helped by the heat of the night. He checked the mirror once more and flashed a smile. Yes, he'd do. He looked at the reflection in the mirror. Just 20, and not bad, he thought. Blue eyes looked back at him with a mischievous sparkle in each. Yes, he'd do. He picked up a bag with many changes of shirt he would need for that night and set off down the path towards the town. As he neared the buildings, the sound of the music increased, and his steps soon found a matching rhythm. He was about to start work. He had come to the small island during his year off from college and stayed. He laughed. That must have been over a year ago. Now he was almost one of the locals. He spent his time working in the bars, the discos, anywhere he wanted. He loved the life and, the girls. Women on holiday. You could always tell the new ones apart from the others. Like a fruit that ripens, going from soft pink to painful red to the sun-tanned goddess that they left as. He loved them. Oh, how he loved them, waiting until they were ripe before picking them. His heart had been hurt. He'd fallen in love a few times, but each and every girl he'd been with, he always treated like a lady. He had never just gone to a girl for sex alone. Tonight was just like any other. He worked, he moved behind the bar, waving to the others as he placed his bag on the back of the bar. It was early yet, and just a few of the people were there. He knew that soon it would be a mass of heaving bodies. He checked that the bottles were in place and full, poured as many of the club specials as he could and left them under on the shelf under the bar. It all served to save time. The ice buckets for now were full, but in the heat of the night they would soon turn into water. Dave, the DJ, was playing some old music that he liked to play, which soon would be replaced by the pulsating beat of the disco music. The first of the evening crowd drifted in, and the bell was sounded for the first time as the first tip was thrown into the bucket. It had been his idea to sound the bell, or to sound a horn when the tip was given. He's sure it helped increase the customer's acceptance for giving a tip, and added to the fun. The bar started to fill, and Dave started to rev up the music as the first bodies moved onto the dance floor. He moved up and down the bar taking orders while serving others. He practised, and now could manage 3 or 4 orders at a time. The tip bell sounded again and again, with the odd klaxon being sounded as a large tip was given. The room started to heave, and he caught the eye of many a woman, making sure he had a smile for all of them. Some he knew, some he wanted to know. The air beat loud with the music. Men and women came together, each movement a hint of promise of things to come. He went and changed into yet another t-shirt, resting for a moment and looking round the heaving bar. A figure at a table in the far corner of the dance floor caught his eye. She was not beautiful. He did not know what it was. Something was different. Perhaps the fact that in the whole crowd of people she was the only person who did not smile when he flashed his smile at them. He went back to work, but at the back of his mind he could not forget the girl. He smiled at the people, he joked, and the orders were met, but his eyes kept straying to the lonely figure at the table. Many times he saw men going up to her, trying every trick in the book to get her to talk, to get with her, but nobody managed. Her table had an assortment of drinks on it, but she never tasted any of them. She sat with unseeing eyes, and nobody and nothing was going to penetrate her shell. He could feel the hurt and the despair from behind the bar, and his heart ached at the sight of her. The time passed quickly, and though he was slipped more than one invite into a promised heaven, tonight was different. As the music slowed and couples left to continue their seeking of joy and fulfillment in other locations, his shift was over. He would pick up his share of the tips tomorrow, but for now he thought he had other plans. He moved to her table, and as he drew close he could see the streaks of tears down her face, and he sensed so much despair and so much hurt. It was like a force field surrounding her. He moved a chair next to the table and sat down. She did not notice him, or so it seemed, and for once he did not know what to say. He sat there, and his own feelings seemed to be impregnated by her sorrow. Thoughts of home, of loneliness and a wasted life filled his mind. He had more than enough money saved up. He was good at his job, and the tip money alone was more than enough to keep him very happy. After an age, she looked up at him, and the sadness he saw in her eyes almost knocked him off his chair. He involuntarily grasped as the wave of sadness hit him. He moved his hand and gently touched hers. It was stone cold, like her heart. At least she didn't move it away. She looked up, and in a voice choked with sadness and tears asked one word. Why? Without thinking, his arm went round her. She froze and he stopped, but with a sob that tore his heart apart, she rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't know how long he sat like that. His shoulder was wet from her tears. The night was fading, and Dave had passed the music back to the cassette player behind the bar. The tables were cleared away as the first kiss of dawn was in the skies. The last people were leaving, and they looked at him, and they placed a key on the table in front of him so he could lock up. The room grew quiet, and soft sounds played, added to the moment. His arm was round her, and she seemed a bit more at peace with the world. As the sun moved into the sky, and the warmth of the morning started to seep under the bar door, without saying a word, they moved out of the bar and slowly across the road to the beach. He looked at her as their feet left 2 lines of footprints on the sea-swept sand. She would have been pretty except for the sadness that covered her like a shroud. Her eyes were ever changing, but now so red and puffed after her crying that it was hard to see them. Her face was tanned, and he guessed she'd been there for a while. Yes, he thought, her face was not beautiful, but a face of beauty. Her body, now within his arms, was all that any female body could be. They walked along together. Not a word was said, and at the end she looked up into his eyes and kissed his cheek. But the look and the one word she had spoken was still etched in his heart. Why? The first time he went home to his room alone. He could not get her out of his mind. The sun came up, and for the first time for quite a while he reached to the phone and called his parents back in England. Of course, they were surprised and overjoyed to hear from him. Of course they were worried about him, and were pleased to hear from him, and his mother let out a silent sob when at the end of the call he half whispered the words he'd never said before that night. I love you, Mum. The next night he worked, and half of him was looking for her, but she was not there, and it made the evening very lonely despite all the people in the bar. Suddenly, as the music started to slow, she was there at the same table, and his heart lifted as the faintest of smiles flitted across her face as their eyes met. As soon as he could, he made his way back to her table, and this time her hand sought his. They sat for a short time until it was time for him to go back to work, but as he went to leave, he felt a small squeeze on his hand, just enough to know somebody was there and cared. This time, he thought, as he carried on with his work, looking at her at every chance, this time it would be different. She would never have to feel the pain. Never would she ever have to ask why. He knew this time it was going to be forever.